with Comic Gates fans and supporters literally showing up to Eric July's great-grandfather's gravesite to take selfies in front of him. July's great-grandfather was the inspiration for July's flagship character, Isom, but that's what happens when you align yourself with hate groups who only accept you because you're pushing their narrative. Though
No, I did not know that that's what they were doing. I didn't know they was hanging out at Eric July's grandfather's grave. The same people you was trying to rub elbows with was disrespecting your ancestors, and you're telling me and all these other people that's what you want to align yourself with?
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What is going on, everybody? This your man Dre Mac coming to you again with another episode of the Dre Mac Show. If you're watching this, this is on. This is a premiere. This is a video. I am not live. Obviously, if I'm doing this and I'm not live, that means I have some other stuff that was going on that I need to take care of. So make sure to watch this on a premiere. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to like and share this video, especially if you're a first time watcher. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel also. Well, today I'm actually going to do a reaction video to this video called The Black Superhero Paradox. It actually talks about the history of black superheroes. So I want to get into this. I'm going to watch this with you guys, and let's discuss this black superhero paradox. Of course, you already know that I've done a lot as far as talking about recast T'Challa, you know, and the importance of T'Challa being on screen. So without further ado, I wanted to watch this reaction video with you guys. Let's talk about the Black Superhero Paradox. Let's get into it. Also, the links of this will be in the description if you want to watch this without my commentary. So let's get into it.
William Irvin Eisner was one of the earliest pioneers in the comic book industry, best known for his series The Spirit, which ran from 1940 to 1952. The Spirit was a major hit for its time. At its peak, The Spirit was syndicated in 20 American newspapers with a total circulation of 5 million copies. People loved this comic for its mix of crime drama, noir vibes, and mystery-filled stories. The Spirit and many other works by Eisner, like A Contract with God, made Eisner a household name. Alongside his help,
I want to say that The Spirit was actually turned into a movie years later. I'm not for certain. I will get that information, but let's keep going. Let's keep going.
The advancement of the comic book industry with introducing concepts like the graphic novel and aiding the next generation of cartoonists by teaching comic book courses at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Eisner achieved so much in the comic book industry, so many awards, accolades, and celebrations. One of the highest awards you can attain in the comic book industry is named the Eisners, after the cartoonist, which is the Oscars for the comic book industry. But there's something...
And The Spirit, I don't know if it was under the same... the same, I know this was a Frank Miller story, but The Spirit was a movie that came out in 2008. It was based on like the Sin City comics and stuff like that. But this was a Frank Miller one, but I'm not for sure if this was the same comic book. But let's keep going. Let's hear what he has to say.
Thing Eisner also did that was really distasteful. Enter Ebony White. Ebony White was the Spirit's sidekick who was designed in a racist, ugly manner. That was a typical depiction of black people in the Jim Crow era. Eisner gave Ebony over-exaggerated pink lips and large eyes, something you would see in blackface. Eisner also gave...
And this is something that I've talked about in the history of black comics that I've done on my channel before. This was some of the stuff that I talked about when you start talking about black heroes, black comic book characters. The way we were characterized and media was totally different than what people will talk about today. And The Spirit was that same that movie that came out, The Spirit, in 2008 was the same The Spirit by Will Eisner. So to kind of give you some context, but of course they didn't put this guy in here because they would have been called out for racism. Let's keep going.
gave Ebony a very country minstrel show pattern of speech. Eisner tried to justify the way he drew this character by pretty much saying this was a trend of the time. But even back then, people understood this imagery of black people was wrong. But Will still decided to draw this character in this way. I've seen others defend this character by saying things like, well, he was treated with respect throughout the comics and had a purpose and was not just played for some joke. Again, this is just a cop-out because this racist caricature of this black boy character was wrong and had long-lasting implications.
Very wrong.
Remember, this comic was ran through 20 newspapers all over the United States. Millions of people may have seen this character and probably didn't even read the comic, but just saw his face and may have laughed. This face has been seen by millions of people and it was normalized. Pretty interesting that Eisner.
And then remember, always, this was in publication. You have to understand the way that black people were characterized in media. That's why so many people like myself go so hard about how we're portrayed in media, the way the media overruns our stories when it comes to something like crime, especially when it comes to the situation where it's a black man even against a white woman or something like that. The way we're over characterized compared to if it was a black woman, or it was with the emphasis they put on black crime, in the way we're over dramatized when it comes to black on white crime. So these are all the things that I said that in publication, if you really look at it, the way that we're treated is something that has to go back to the minstrel period. That has to go back to Jim Crow, and the way that we're characterized, especially in comic books, has a lasting impression on some of his readers because you really believe that that's what it is. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the Twitter threads right now. Let's keep going.
Eisner decided to create such a character that represented all the negative stereotypes of black people when he himself grew up fighting and was being bullied for his Jewish heritage. Imagine how these depictions made the black readers of these comics feel.
We would look at these other characters and sort of be ashamed because that's all we would see of ourselves. That was the representations that we had.
This is the reason why T'Challa is so important.
After a while, you're saying, why isn't the hero African American?
Sadly, Eisner was not the only person who drew black people this way, nor was this comic the only one to do this.
Yep.
I see styrofoam. My hood gone. Now, in the early years of the comics industry,
this is getting into the
Spirit, for example. I'm going to give some examples.
Now, again, this is getting into the history of black people in comics, in comic strips, in media. Understand the reason why recast T'Challa is so important. The reason why Blade is so important. The reason why a character like Spawn is so important. The reason why characters like Static Shock and Black Lightning and Monica Rambeau, and all these other Vixen, all these other black characters, it's so important. Here is the root of it.
Examples. Sunday newspaper supplement introduced the title character's black sidekick, the taxi driver Ebony White. Dell Comics. The New Funnies featured the antics of Little 8-Ball alongside Raggedy Ann and Andy. Jungle Comics were another popular genre, very popular. And
that's where
Captain Marvel's Black Ballet
people,
and Sidekick
Black Panther
Steamboat
came from Jungle
was another
Comics, Jungle
fixture
Action.
in this popular comic book series until 1945.
They forgot about him too.
And so in these moments, when I look at these images, I think about one of my favorite quotes by writer Charles Johnson, who's also a cartoonist, who cautions us. He says, we should remember that the pictures we are looking at, these era images of Blacks, are a testament to the failure of the imagination and often of empathy too, and tell us nothing about Black people, but everything about what white audiences approved and felt comfortable with in pop culture until the 1950s.
And remember, I told you I got this book called The Black Image in the White Mind by George Fredrickson, which goes into detail on how white people thought of Blacks. It is very important. If you want anything about your history, that's a book that I highly recommend. Let's keep going.
Eisner and many other comic book artists' drawings of black characters most likely influenced many comic artists to come up after them, like a Robert Crumb, to also draw black characters in the same way, and may have influenced some of your favorite mangaka to do so as well. Robert Crumb is, in my opinion, one of the cringiest comic book artists to come out. A great artist, yes, but his ideas and stories are something a edgelord teen would create. When Crumb gets called out for his horrible depictions of not just black people, but of women and Jewish people as well, he justified by saying people just don't understand the message. Like, Come on, man. Look
Seriously.
at these pictures. This
Exactly.
video isn't about shitting on Will Eisner, who's been dead for over 20 years. This video is about black superheroes. I want to talk about Ebony White to show this is where we started as black people in comics. How black characters in comics started out as lowly racist, black-faced sidekicks to being some of the best-selling characters out, recognized and respected by so many people around the world.
African American, I'm African, I'm black as the moon, heritage of a small village, part of my residence, came from the...
The black superhero paradox is the concept of what it is to be a superhero while being black. How these characters are supposed to be represented in ways that lean towards appreciation of black culture and not appropriation. The idea of balancing how to tackle issues related in the black community whilst not isolating other communities. Some ask, do we need to always use black heroes to touch on social issues? Others may also ask, why do we need to worry about these ideals of others when they never cared about our own? The paradox doesn't just apply to these characters, but those who create, write, or draw them. Doesn't matter if the creator or writer of these comics and characters are black or not. Do these creators need to compromise their vision again in order to appeal to the masses? I'm going to try and answer these questions and more in this video. Let's start with a bit of history. Mainstream comics like Marvel and DC didn't present real black superheroes till the 60s and 70s, with characters like Luke Cage, Black Lightning, and Black Panther being the most popular, all of which were created by white men. Luke Cage being created to take advantage of the blaxploitation movies of the 70s. Black Lightning created in order to compete with Marvel's Luke Cage. Both again were caricatures of black people with goofy outfits and speech patterns. Black Lightning being,
and again, when he says, when the author of this, which again I'm gonna put his information in the comment section, because shout out to this brother for making this, but when they say that these were literally the epitome of black exploitation, this is exactly what it was. Especially Luke Cage. Like I said, I got Luke Cage, I think number 8 and number 9. It's one of the funniest comic books that I ever read, because you could tell the writer who wrote that comic watched the black exploitation movie and said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make Luke Cage beat the brakes off of Dr. Doom for $200 and says, where's my money, honey? Knowing damn well no black people that actually talks like that normally, in real life. That's something that you see on television. But yet he felt it was a need to put this on inside of the comic books. And again, same thing with Black Lightning. You can look at his outfit, look at his outfit, look at the afro, the way he talks, all of that is going to sound like black exploitation. Same thing that happened with Monica Rambeau. You could tell that she was based off of Foxy Brown, but this is the way that we were written. The difference was Black Panther was written totally different than he was. You know what I mean? Than these two characters was. So that's just a little bit of context. Let me keep going.
Being the origin of the black superheroes only having lightning powers trope, even though there are many black superheroes without those powers. Lastly, Black Panther being created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, both who stated their main reasons for creating the character being they wanted to see more black characters in their comics and had nothing to do with the civil rights movement of the time, nor is associated with the Black Panther Party that was beginning to gain popularity around the time as well. Black Panther technically being the actual first black superhero, his first appearance being in July 1996 in an issue of Fantastic Four. All 3 of these characters came and went, having comic series being announced and usually due to low sales being canceled. These characters are often featured in other teams' comics like the Avengers, Justice League of America, Fantastic Four, and such. I personally can't speak on how black fans felt about these characters at the time. I know many people did not connect with Black Panther because of his prince status, him being from Africa and the fantastical land of Wakanda, and the caricature nature of Cage and Black Lightning also didn't stick either because it didn't.
I can't really say that because because he had an ongoing comic in the 1970s. It was highly popular. That comic didn't get canceled until 1980. 1979. He came back in 1989 and he was dormant for 10 years. And then you had but he was also very prominent in the Avengers comic. So I can't really say that, being an older guy, but not that old, I can't say that he wasn't, because he was always popular. He might not connect with certain people, but it's because of that he came from royalty and he was still in Africa and he was different than the foundational African the black Americans that was reading this comics. But it was a dream. That's all it was what if Africa never got colonized, and this colonized, and this is what it could have been. So it was always a dream, but we still seeing a black man whooping ass, beating up the Ku Klux Klan, and all of that in his comics. So I take that with a little grain of salt, but again, I want to let it finish because I didn't want to interject that much. Let's go.
It didn't seem real.
In the beginning, I embraced it and I bought all of the issues, but I was finding it hard to read it. Some of the characters struck me as being stereotypical and sort of making fun.
I mean, I love Luke Cage, and my cousins and I would sit down and we would read Luke Cage and we would laugh and we would go, nobody talks like this.
Exactly.
As time went on, these characters got their just due, with many of them being overhauled and rewritten with more depth and relatable factors added to them, starting with writers like Christopher Priest taking over Black Panther and turning the character into the character we know today. Later on in the early to mid 2000s, Reginald Hudlin took over Black Panther as well, and his run of Black Panther has been met with such high praise.
Yeah.
Storm was also a popular, prominent Black character, being a staple of the X-Men comics. The problem in my eyes with these characters is that they were written through the lens of white writers, especially early on. So there was a real lack of connection to what it was like being Black in this world during the time when these heroes were created. I personally don't think it is an issue for white writers to work on Black characters, but there will be subtle nuances that can be overlooked or be lost when a white or non-Black person writes these characters. Something as little as most of these characters having the same haircuts. Most white writers or artists who aren't deeply in community with Black people wouldn't be able to, or maybe even care to think about those things like the differences between a taper fade, a blast fade, or bald fade. And we saw this with all the aforementioned characters, with most of them having the same 3 haircuts.
What is going on right now? Most of these characters getting the Killmonger. Like, dude, everybody doesn't have that whack ass haircut. Or, let me shut up.
These are common characters that you'll find in comic books in the late 80s, early 90s. Now, all the characters in the comic books, they look somewhat like this. Either they're bald with a goatee, bald with an eye missing, right?
Like Samuel Jackson.
So the middle one there, that's Luke Cage, right? Or Rhodey, the War Machine and Iron Man.
Yeah.
He looked like that in the comic books at one time. That's Nick Fury, of course, that we all see in the movies. But also there's a guy called Deathlock on Marvel. Yep. He has an eye missing. Cyborg on DC. He happens to have an eye missing and he happens to be bald, right? Oh, and it gets better. John Stewart, Green Lantern, the Black Green Lantern.
Bowl cut.
He has a bowl cut. Sometimes in the comic books, they get a little jazzy, put a little lightning bolt in there, right? And then what's really easy for illustrators to draw is a man with a ridiculously sized afro.
And now the new fan favorite, the dreadlock.
God said exactly.
This is an overused hairstyle.
God, I hate this haircut. I hate the Killmonger look. Ever since Killmonger made it popular, they forgot all about T'Challa being in the movie. And I kept saying Killmonger is the main character of that movie. I keep saying it. You know what I'm saying? It's playing behind me. It is not T'Challa. It is Killmonger. What people do, and what did comic artists that was non-Black start doing? Drawing every character to look like that. And that's ridiculous. There's more dudes with longer locks than this mess. And this is dumb. I hate this hairstyle.
For Black characters at this point, it was pretty much played out once Killmonger came out in Black Panther #1. So I don't know why it was used so much. Black women characters definitely don't get no love in the hairstyle department. Some white writers have written comics with the main characters being Black, but the race of the character does not really come into play or matter in the series. For example, Mark Miller's comic Prodigy, the main character Edison Crane, who is just like a James Bond or a Bruce Wayne type of guy. He's a super genius, super rich, and is damn near perfect at everything, that just happens to be Black. Another example of this is when Bulletproof from Invincible takes over the mantle of said character and becomes the main character for a few issues. We get a great backstory of Bulletproof. Nothing about his race ever comes into play in that background though, and that's fine. So those are good comics, and I believe there's...
So let me ask you guys that is watching this right now, does the race of the character actually matters when we're telling a complete story? Does the race, if he's a Black guy, but there's it doesn't, not every black person has to go through a racist moment or oppression or different things like that. Some of them are just raised up in suburban neighborhoods, especially now when nothing ever happens. They don't really see race unless they're living in a place where it's predominantly more white. And there could be race issues that come up there or whatever. But do you think that's important? Put it in the comment section below and let me know what you guys think. Let's keep going.
There's room for these types of stories. Jordan Peele also did this in his 2019 movie Us, where this family, the Wilsons, are tormented by evil clones of themselves called the Tethered. Again, a movie where the cast just happens to be black. There is a difference though with this movie compared to those comics, since it was written by Jordan Peele, who is a black man. Peele wrote and added subtle things to the movie that only a black writer would think about, like the dad character, Gabe Wilson. Throughout the film, he's wearing a Howard sweater, Howard being one of the most popular HBCUs around. He also wrote Gabe in a way that subverts the big black man stereotype. Purposefully, I might add. Gabe, played by Wilson Duke, a 6'5", probably 260, 280 black man, is someone in the film who comes off as dorkish and goofy. Spider-Verse movies are a perfect example of a non-black writer writing for a black character. This movie showed that Miles was a black or Afro-Latino character without overdoing it, showing his culture and who he was in a very subtle way. Either it was his fashion choices, the music he listens to, and even his bilingual greetings. Very appropriate, not feeding to stereotypes and not trying too hard to show his race, but also not completely ignoring it. Making Miles into a real relatable character. Far from what comic book writer Yehudi Macario did, who wrote the 4th issue of the What If Miles Morales was miniseries.
My God.
What If Miles was Thor? And this comic is straight up horrible. The narration is in raps. Miles calls Asgard his hood. Miles is also designed to look like Odell Beckham Jr. And it's just a straight up cringe fest of a comic. Mercado later apologized for the stereotypical depiction of this character after all the backlash he got from this comic. The editors of this story should also been called out for letting this be pushed through and printed. I don't understand what their thought process was.
It was trash.
This is where the importance of having black creators comes in. When black writers take control of these characters, things change. If we take a look at later installments of the previous characters,
I even say Dr. Eve Ewing doing Ironheart. This is the reason why Ironheart is so popular. In Marvel, I won't say she's just uber popular, because you're gonna always look at comic book sales and be like, she's not that popular. But the reason why she was popular is because of Dr. Eve Ewing and the way that she wrote the character, and she put her nuances on it, being a black woman herself. So I'm going to give Dr. Eve Ewing her props. Christopher Priest with Black Panther, Reginald Unlin, Ta-Nehisi Coates, you know what I mean? But not who shall not be named. We're not talking about him. Skip him.
Characters I mentioned, like Luke Cage, Black Panther, and Black Lightning, once they got black writers, the tones of these comics began to shift and become more relatable and realistic. Luke Cage wasn't speaking like Dolomite anymore. Black Panther wasn't just fighting the Ku Klux Klan, but was having to deal with different types of oppression and microaggressions from some of the people he had to work with. This leads me to politics in comics.
All art is propaganda. Every must be. I do not care a damn about any art that is not used for propaganda.
Black stories and characters are looked at as some sort of political statement, especially nowadays with this culture war going on. Any black character presented is received as some sort of forced diversity, when more times than not, it isn't.
But there is a hardcore piece of the audience whose back goes up whenever you go into these issues, and they don't even realize it. And what kills me about it is when they're writing about it, they're always hyper rational. Look, the fact is there are more white characters, and if you picked randomly, you would end up with all white teams. And the fact that there are 3 black people on this team is statistically ridiculous. I mean, it's obviously a quota. And the quota arguments on fictional teams crack me up, because who's actually, I'm sorry, somebody losing a job here? Which fictional character is losing a job?
I love this.
There's no connection. They're not talking about what's going on in the comic books.
Right.
They're talking about what they think is going on in their lives, and that's not really going on either.
William Irvin Eisner was one of the earliest
Let me get back to the brother where he was talking, because I accidentally hit backwards. And what's funny is that this is where the whole DEI conversation comes from. Like, just because you have these people in the comics does not mean that they're taking over your fictional universe. You know, just because you got some black people don't mean, oh my God, here we go. There's forced diversity. That means you either want it either one way. You don't want no black people in your comic, which is fine. Go read the comics from the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s. You know what I mean? Where you don't have a bunch of, you don't want it, you ain't got it. Go back and read those. But nowadays, there's black people everywhere. There's gay people everywhere. There's Mexican people. There's Asian people. You know, there's Latinos from South America, the Caribbeans, and all of this other stuff from Cuba. There's people everywhere. There's diversity all around you. That's not forced. And every time that I have a problem with that is that in fictional universes, it's supposed to represent the real world. And if you go outside and you live around all white people and that's all there is around you, well, that's your problem. I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's your reality. But my reality and the majority of America's reality is that we live amongst people of different diversities, and you have to get over yourself. You know what I'm saying? They're not taking over your little fictional universe. They're not DEI hires. This is just the real world, and that's something you have to deal with. Let's keep going.
They're talking about what they think is going on in their lives, and that's not really going on either.
Fanboys always love pushing out the statement, I wish they would just leave politics out of comics. But comics have always been political. One of the main and most popular superheroes is Captain America, who is literally in his first issue fighting Nazis and punching Hitler in the face. This was a huge political statement, especially during this time of World War II. Superman's color scheme isn't by accident also. A lot of superhero comics, especially back in the day, were pushing an agenda. Many people never saw an issue with this propaganda, at least from a consumer standpoint, because these things were not seen as political, just everyday happenings for them. That's because many of these comics,
and I would say before he goes, I would say the only reason why they wasn't seen as political because those heroes are white and they represent what you wish you were. Superman is the avatar for Jews, because he represents the Superman, the ones that they wish could fight against the Nazis, you know, during the Holocaust and all that stuff. You know what I mean? He's their Jesus. He's official. He's Jewish Jesus for comic books. It is what it is. You know that because the S on his chest, the Joel, the L in his name, Jewish, El Shaddai, what we call, you know, what we start looking at for the Jewish name of Jesus and God. Come on now, stop playing with me. It's always been like that. It's always been political. It's always has some type of agenda to it. It's always somebody's pushing their ideology in comics. It's always been like that. Let's keep going.
Were pushing things that already aligned with the viewpoints of these readers. Back in the 1990s, the publishing imprint Milestone Comics came out, and I already made a video covering this company, so go check it out. But to quickly summarize what Milestone was about, Milestone was a comic book company that was founded by Black comic book creators who wanted to diversify the market with more superheroes that looked like them, with stories that were more relatable. Many characters came out from this imprint, most popularly Static, which many of you may know from the WB cartoon series Static Shock. The comics coming out from Milestone dealt with a lot of issues such as drug addiction, racism, teen sexuality, and teen pregnancy, as well as corporate theft of Black creations. One of my favorite series was Icon, who essentially is a Black Superman. Augustus Freeman is an alien who landed on Earth, who was founded by a slave woman. Augustus transforming into a baby once found and growing up as a Black person, but not with the ideals of a Black American. By the time the comic takes place, he's already lived on Earth for over 100 years and is pretty much a Uncle Tom or a Black conservative type. Augustus' views change once he meets Rachel Irving, a teenage girl who convinces Augustus to use his powers to help people while she becomes his sidekick, forming the team Icon and Rocket. At the end of issue 1 of Icon, Augustus tries to help authorities handle a bank robbery, landing in front of all the police to see if he can assist with the conflict, only to get the police to pull their guns and aim them at him and Rachel. Rachel, with Rachel promptly saying, "But I bet this never happens to Superman." This is a story only a black writer could tell. Dwayne McDuffie, the writer of Icon, I'm sure had to deal with racial profiling from police before. Again, many of the Milestone comics dealt with these kinds of themes. Even though these stories are powerful and necessary, these types of stories played a big part in the downfall of Milestone. Again, go check out my video where I covered the happenings of Milestone Media. Dwayne McDuffie had to deal with a lot of issues when it came to writing his own comics.
A writer that the reader knows is black puts a lot of the mainstream, I say mainstream, I mean white readership on edge. I mean white male readership on edge. They're really looking for some proof that I'm trying to, the phrase I get all the time is I'm always trying to shove my agenda down their throat, which seems sexually charged to me. I don't know.
Milestone was ahead of his time with their stories and characters. These comics legacy left.
It's funny. The only time the agenda is being shoved down somebody's throat when they're of color, but they have no problem with white agenda, white superheroes doing white superhero things in the midst of war. If we're dealing with, September 11th, we're dealing with the war in Iraq, the war in Iran, the war in Afghanistan. All of that's cool. All of that's fair game when they're white, but when they're black, there's all in these comic books is dealing with issues that have to deal with us, and in certain aspects, it's always an agenda push. It's funny how that works. Let's keep going.
Left an impact on many young readers, especially black comic book fans. Good thing the company started when it did, because if the company would have came out today, it would have been deemed as woke or DEI comics. These two buzzwords have been turned from positive initiatives to something deemed as negative, forced progressive ideologies. Diversity, equality, and inclusion. I'm not sure how there's a problem with just accepting people for who they are, but conservative right-wing media and pundits have framed this as if minority groups are being handed things like jobs or opportunities that they don't deserve, as if they're getting the upper hand, when DEI is more about leveling out the playing field for everyone. And just so you know, DEI doesn't just help black or queer people. This also helps disabled veterans, white women, and such. So I don't know what the issue is. I don't get it. The term woke is another black phrase being stolen and misconstrued into something else. Going from a phrase black people will say.
Tyrone Magnus, you need to listen to this part, buddy, because you've taken it and you have bastardized it, and knowing it was for us, but you have taken it and found the right white ring media and start using that same word. I would never use that buzzword the way you do, Tyrone.
Say to each other, stating stay woke pretty much meant staying aware of what people, especially the government or media, is telling you. Do your own independent research. Don't take what they are saying at face value, because they could be lying or changing up the truth. Now wokeness is also equated to some negative progressive propaganda. People viewing any movie, show, book, or piece of media that is not led by a straight white man as woke. This precedence has affected how many black creators are making comics nowadays, whether they like to admit it or not. W.E.B. Du Bois famously created this concept of the double consciousness, describing the psychological experience of marginalized individuals, particularly black Americans, who must consistently view themselves through the lens of a dominant, often racist society, leading to a fragmented sense of self. And I believe that the belittling or dismissal of black art and stories plays a role into this. Equating diversity into something negative will often leave black creatives in a sore spot. Black creators either lean into their diverse ideals while others completely try to avoid it. Some overtly try to oppose these ideas.
Eric,
as is the case.
Eric July. This is the reason why I asked this question earlier. Does race have to play a part in the actual comic? That's why I asked you guys to put your answers, and then if you do, make sure that you timestamp it too, if you actually did. But does that actually, do you care about the character's race and all of that? And I can't wait for him to hear what he has to say about Mr. Eric July. Let's keep going.
Case with YouTuber Eric July. July created his comic book company under the guise of being non-woke comics and made millions of dollars off of it. And if you don't know who Eric July is, this is pretty much his whole gimmick, being anti-woke and tokenism, but it seems to be all being bad faith. Just stating that you are not going to put politics in your comics is a political statement in itself. Quick little tangent. I think the Eric July thing is funny because when he started publishing comics, he aligned himself with the borderline alt-right comics group Comicsgate, but was quickly barred from the group once once he started becoming more successful than the people in the group, mainly the leader Ethan Van Sciver. He was just kicked out of the group, but was blatantly disrespected.
Oh, wait a minute. So you're telling me that you did all of that to rub elbows with him, kind of like a guy that I know named Myron. I think he's from a podcast. And he tries to align himself with, you know, the whites that accept him. Hey man, I'm just like you. Down those Negroes, them black folks, them the blackies, the darkies, and all of that stuff, only to get shunned by them. You know, Fresh and Fit, you know. So you're telling me that Eric July went through the same thing? Oh, this is news to me. Let's keep going. I think it's getting good, y'all.
Respected not just online but in real life, with Comic Gates fans and supporters literally showing up to Eric July's great-grandfather's gravesite to take selfies in front of it. July's great-grandfather was the inspiration for July's flagship character Isom, but that's what happens when you align yourself with hate groups who only accept you because you're pushing their narrative. Though
no, I did not know that that's what they were doing. I didn't know they was hanging out at Eric July's grandfather's grave. The same people you was trying to rub elbows with was disrespecting your ancestors, and you're telling me and all these other people that's what you want to align yourself with? Think about that, big dog.
July never really changed his political beliefs. Anyways, this is where the paradox comes in. When we tell our stories, they're often labeled as woke or race baiting. It's like we can't win. If we create new black characters or tell stories about our struggles, it's labeled as too much. But if we don't, we're also told we're not doing enough. Fans claim they want original black characters, but never support them. They'd rather complain about race swapping than pick up a comic with a black superhero.
I agree.
Fans also like to do this mental gymnastics when it comes to the changing of mantles of characters. When Captain America is changed from Steve Rogers to the Falcon, it's a problem. But when Wally West takes over the mantle of the Flash, it's all good. I wonder why. They don't want us to tell their stories unless it's to make everyone, meaning white audiences, feel comfortable. And they don't want black heroes to be the lead. They'd rather us be the stereotypical sidekick. But I say, fuck that. It's important for black creators and characters to get their just due. Tell the stories that are necessary. No, not every story has to be about our blackness or the oppression we've received as a race. I love a great escapist story like anyone else, but we shouldn't feel the need to compromise our voices to appease everyone. We should also be the ones telling our own authentic stories and history, especially with the government nowadays trying to ban certain parts of history. It is way more important to not let them nerf our black heroes or dumb down what really was happening or going on in this country. Look at what they did to Martin Luther King. They minimalized the doctor to one speech just to fit the narrative that they were trying to push. Think about how many black activists and black leaders of the past that we never learned about in school. They say go woke, go broke, but I think that's bullshit. There are many comics that have been very successful that have diverse cast and dealt with political issues. Bitterroot is an American comic book series created by Sanford Green, Chuck Brown, and David F. Walker, published by Image Comics. Bitterroot is a horror action series set in 1924 Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. The graphic novel written by David F. Walker and Chuck Brown follows the Sangre family, a line of monster hunters who use science and mysticism to cure rather than kill the creatures they track. The monsters known as the Janoon are created from what happens when you are overtaken by hatred and prejudice.
Bitterroot is about the Sangre family. They are a family of monster hunters set against the backdrop of the Harlem Renaissance. But the thing is that monsters in this world are people who have been infected by a disease. That disease is hatred, racism, intolerance, oppression. And the Sangre family specializes mostly in curing them, but there's a faction of the family that believes we should just kill them.
It's almost kind of a Malcolm Martin scenario.
This comic is black from the first page to the last. All the creators, the main cast of characters, and even the subject matter. Let me not forget the amazing movie poster reference variant covers that were coming out during the first run of the series. Look at these. These are amazing. This comic cuts deep with not only the analogy of racism and prejudice turning people into literal monsters, but also those whose souls are tortured by pain and grief of loss. These horrible feelings turning these people into a different type of monster. The Inzondo. This story does a great job of creating and developing each character, adding real life historical tragedies to this story like the Tulsa Massacre to develop certain characters, but also reinforce how racism is in the United States, how someone who may have lived through these horrid events may end up. Even with its steampunk and sci-fi elements, the story really hits on key real life issues. Not only things that Black people go through, but all kinds of marginalized groups. This
is something that I would love to see a show about, like a weekly show, like on Amazon or something like that. I would love to see Bitterroot. If you would like to see something like Bitterroot on like Amazon or even a movie or something, some adaptation of that, put it in the comment section below and let me know what you think.
This comic really shows what happens when Black creators make Black stories freely with no holds barred. Walker, Green, and Brown didn't have the vision to please any type of audience. They created a comic that was true to them. These creators put Black characters in a genre they are rarely the main characters in, with the steampunk sci-fi story, but still keeping it real with their messaging in the comic. Bitterroot is a successful series with critical high praise, selling fairly well, even got a movie option for the comic. They also have a sequel series that just came out. The next series of this comic is based in the 60s. Bitterroot also won 2 Eisners, one in 2020 and another one in 2022, which is pretty ironic. Black creators and Black comics have been put in the box, but over the years has been slowly being broken. Main characters like Miles Morales and Black Panther are doing gangbusters at the box office. Black indie comics like Stranger Comics are doing big time numbers on Kickstarter. So many new creators that are coming up, I just want to say, tell your story. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of who you are or the stories you want to tell. I know that I'm doing that with my own comics. Black superheroes and Black characters in comics are also important because they reflect the complexities of our lives. They show that we're not just one thing and that we deserve to see ourselves as heroes in all kinds of stories.
I agree,
so let's keep pushing
1000%.
for authentic representation, no more stereotypes, no more compromises. These Black superheroes also show little Black kids who they can be, seeing themselves in something that's fantastical and amazing. Many of these Black comic creators barely had Black icons to look up to as inspiration. Myself, only being 27 at the time of the recording, grew up in the 2000s and the 2010s, and I had little positive representation in the mainstream medias, let alone comics. Now, being
and this is the reason why Black characters in mainstream comics still stories need to be told, just like these independent ones. Because when you have these guys who's growing up and they're growing up with manga and comics and stuff like that, if they don't feel represented, then who are they really looking up to? They have to create their own characters. So I completely agree.
Being a comic book creator myself, I don't see myself creating a comic or story where the main character isn't Black. Even at a very young age, I always knew I wanted to create stories where I could put myself in. Lastly, if you think that this topic is just woke nonsense, maybe it's time for you to open your eyes and to see there's much more to it. And if you don't want to, you can suck my dick. Obviously, I'm not the end all be all when it comes to this subject matter. This topic is
shout out to this young brother,
heavy-handed, and I've probably merely just scratched the surface of like the topics of race, politics, and like all this cultural stuff when it comes to comics. Obviously, Black people are not the only people in comics who have been subject to like prejudice and racial depictions and just straight up derogatory imagery. I'm only speaking from my perspective because I am a Black man and I can only speak from there. I don't want to speak for other races, people of other sexual orientations and such. It was just a topic that's been on my mind since I started getting back in there, being a comic book fan, really. Honestly baffled by how conservative, I guess you could say, or right-leaning, alt-right some of these fan groups can get. I mean, it's really bizarre and weird. So as time's gone on and I've heard the random arguments from people online and their cultural war discourse, it just kind of bugged me. So I just wanted to add my somewhat 2 cents in there. I do deep thought analysis on comic books on this channel. That's kind of the whole point. That's what makes comics such a great medium, because you can read the comics and also find little bits and pieces and dove deep in them. At least that's how I view the medium and how I read my comics. I don't just read them for the surface level like viewing points. I read them to see what I can get out of them and things of that nature. Right? And I try to put that in my own writing and my own drawings when I make my own comic books. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching this video today. And this is kind of a longer video than I'm usually doing. We'll see. I might come back to this subject matter later as I do more research and dive deeper into this history. I mean, hell, like I only talked about mainstream comics. I didn't even get to like underground comics or even like the old time like comic strips, which were like way worse than like anything that came after that. So
Exactly.
you know, we'll see. Like again, appreciate you guys for watching this video to the end. I'm a comic book creator myself. You can check out my comics on my website. The link is in the description. I'm also going to put in the description
And I'm gonna go ahead and stop this comic right here. Stop this comment. Go ahead and stop this video right here. I will make sure to put a link of this young brother's video in the description here. Again, this is Kova's Cookout. Kova's Lookout. Not Kova's Cookout, Kova's Lookout. I will make sure to put this all in the description. But what do you think about this subject? To me, this was very thought-provoking. Shout out to Kova's, you know, for putting this out, making you think. Of course, I've put out something about the history of, you know, black comic book heroes and the way that they have looked in media and why it's so important for us to understand that there is a level of hatred when it comes to black superheroes, man. You can just see it through our comments, but there's also a humongous love when they're written right. But of course, y'all put it in the comment section. Y'all tell me what y'all think. All right. Again, thank you so very much for tuning in to another episode of the Dre Max Show. Of course, tell me what you think about this and put it in the comment section below. But don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And don't forget to hit that bell notification so you can never, ever miss one of my videos again. Until next time, I'm going to holler at you guys later. Peace and vibe higher, y'all. Y'all enjoy your Tuesday. Where is my outro at? Because you already know I gotta go. Wait a minute. You're telling me the video's over? What? Huh. Okay, I guess so. If you have came to this portion of the video, thank you so very much for sticking to the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that little bell notification so you never miss one of my videos. And if you really want to, you don't got to, go ahead and follow the social media links that's down below. Until next time, I'll let you guys later. Peace and vibe higher, y'all. Y'all take care of yourself.